to Personality Quest for the week. Joel Mark Witt here with Antonia Dodge, Jonathan Harden, coming to you live over YouTube. But my producer, Karina, keeps giving me a signal that we're not live yet. And then she gives me the signal we're live. So I'm actually confused that we're live. Give me a thumbs up, Karina. Are we actually live on air right now? Okay, we are live on air. Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Joel Mark Witt, Antonia Dodge, Jonathan Harden. Producing today is Karina Gunyon. Welcome to Personality Quest. This is your first time here. Welcome. We're glad you're here. We've got a really cool couple hours planned for you. Usually about 90 minutes together. Sometimes it goes to 2 hours. We start off talking a little bit about a concept for the week. We use the Personality Hacker podcast, a little short clip from that, to kick off a conceptual idea. We have a broader conversation. We go into some breakout rooms, unpack that. Then we go a little bit deeper. We go into the inner space of ourselves. We journal a little bit about what this means for us, how it shows up in our lives. And then at the very end, we give exercise or a challenge for everybody to go test out in the world based on the things we talked about and we journaled about, for you to go apply some of these things in your real life, because we think true learning equals behavior change. True understanding equals doing something different. So, Jonathan and Tony, I'm a little disappointed. I was super excited today. Today's January 14th, 2024. My favorite and the best football team was going to play today against the Bills. And I was all excited. I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to miss the first part of the game because I'll be on Quest with everybody here, but I'll get to see the end of it. But they moved the game to tomorrow, I think, because of the weather in Western New York. I think the entire side of New York's been shut down because of the deep cold and the big winter storm coming. So they moved it to tomorrow. But I was thinking about this. It's really exciting to go watch the game. And I was going to talk about this today, how excited I was, but now I got to wait till tomorrow. So it's like this anticipation. But can you imagine how much football would suck if they never actually played a game every Sunday? If they just practiced and you'd watch ESPN or you'd watch, people talk about this, but then you never got to actually watch a game. You always got to watch them talk about a game. You got to I could go see practices in Latrobe, Pennsylvania and watch them practice, talk about the theory of football, hear from coaching strategies, look at the gameplay, watch the practice sessions, see who they're hiring, watch the draft, but never actually watch an actual football game. That would be kind of, first of all, it would suck. It would be no one would care. And then the second thing is, it would kind of be unfulfilling. I don't think people would be, I think it wouldn't have the same weight to it, right? It would just kind of be like, all right, what's the point of this? And yet, this is what people do with personality types. They talk about them. They theorize about them. They practice stuff. They have big groups. They get on, like, people will get on panels on YouTube. People will go to conferences. People will read books. People will endlessly stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning with their friends like I do and talk about the theory of it. Whatever it is, except play the game, which is applying it to their actual life and seeing real results, right? I see this all the time. So we think it's silly and stupid in football, but why do we tolerate that with ourselves in personality types or personal growth? Like, why is this so theoretical? And that's what we want to kind of open up the conversation in a broader term to today of this theory versus action. And I'm trying to think, are there any other areas in your life, Jonathan, where this shows up, theory versus action kind of thing? Like, Antonia?
I think one of the things I really like to do is just put personality type in action for my family. It's a small thing, but I think my son uses extroverted thinking, so I'm trying to help him develop systems of automatic connections. So if he gets a birthday card, like today's his birthday, so he got a birthday card from his grandma. I said, okay, the next step is call your grandma for 3.5 minutes and talk to her, telling her birthday card arrived on time.
Yeah.
And thank you. And I think it's good because I think his grandma is an ESTJ, so it's funny because she doesn't really care if you say thank you. She just wants to make sure the card arrived on time. And it's pretty comical. That's how it always is. And right. Ellen's mentioned that to me about her mom. Just like, hey mom, what's up? And mom's like, oh, well, did the birthday card arrive? Did the UPS system work? Did all the systems working fine? That's the kind of language it is. It's not, hi, how are you? And so I tried reassuring my son, like, actually, no, this might be good. You can connect with another extroverted thinker and not have to go through all the social, ping pong dance of extroverted feeling.
Oh, yeah.
That sometimes he loathes to do. He's like, let's just get down to business. 3.5 minute conversation, check the box, go about my day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad your son is open to this. Like, my kids are like, get out of here with this personality stuff half the time, right? They're like, come on, man, get out of here.
And that's just Piper. I think Gunner's into it. So if you've been tracking and you want to know pieces of information, the answer is the Steelers. That's the
Oh.
football team that Joel is mentioning. So
Well, I thought it was,
like,
I said the best team in the world. I thought
Yeah,
everybody would know what I
so,
was talking about.
yeah.
I didn't think I had to name it, but
that's
okay,
right.
fair
The
enough.
implication was clear. If you inferred the wrong team, that's on you. And also happy birthday, Theo.
Oh yeah.
Today's his
Yes.
birthday.
It
Yeah.
is absolutely. He finished up a math curriculum. He does like an online curriculum, and he purposely submitted the very last assignment today, this morning, because he wanted his birthday, or he's wanted his birthday to be around something he completed. So he finished up his whole year's assignment just like 30 minutes ago. We were celebrating, just
Good for
talking
him.
about it. Yeah.
Wow.
So
What's it like to have TJ kids?
they make me feel really bad about my
Yeah,
money, that's for sure.
I'll
Like-
tell you what it's like. It makes you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
That's how it feels.
We played this game the other day called Realize, and basically it's like apples to apples or Cards Against Humanity.
Right.
But you have to, like, Joel's playing the game, and Joel pulls the card and says, he'll pull things like, what's my favorite color? And we all have to guess, but we're specifically then have to guess which one is not true and which one is true.
Mhm.
And so it gets really dicey when you pull a card saying, like, what are my bad habits? And we pulled that in front of our kids, and
Oh
like,
man.
overwhelmingly, it was like, dad doesn't pay, dad doesn't show up on time, or just like, it was a lot of like extroverted thinking stuff that I'm not good at, like manage money, it was humbling, but it was fun.
Shut up. What do you guys know? Get out of here. Go to your rooms.
But I think that's the purpose of kids, is to be little reflectors,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought it was just to keep the species going.
That's true. Yes, no,
Right.
that's very important. Reproduction is important.
It's like, I've done my job. I've perpetuated the species. Now
Yep.
get out of here.
That's right.
You're like, no, it's about gentleness and hugs.
No, it's about kicking them out of the nest. Go
That's
fly.
right. That's right. Figure it out. Yeah. So that concept of theory versus action. I was talking to INTP friend of mine this morning over coffee, and we were talking about how difficult it is to gauge appropriate actions at any given time, because it's a moving target throughout life.
Mm.
And one of the things that I love about type theory, particularly as it relates to action, is that it can help diagnose what is a right action for this moment in the timeline. The challenge, though, is that the theory itself won't tell you. You have to put it into action in order to make that assessment over time. So you have to have been applying it over time to watch the moments in which the thing that you need as a person at this moment changes and shifts. And so to bring it down, because Jonathan's like, what the hell are you talking about?
I know. Thank you.
Yeah, like, I don't follow at all, ever. What are you saying?
This is NTP conversation.
Right.
No one can follow it, Jonathan. Don't feel bad.
Let me give an example. What is the thing I'm supposed to do? So, for example, there are some time periods in our life where we need to go harder on ourselves. And there are some time periods in our life in which we need to be more gentle on ourselves. And there are some time periods in our life when we need to really be pushing ourselves. And there's some time periods in our life when we need to be going like, okay, maybe this is going to burn me out. And
Turn.
right. I don't know what that means, but yes. So,
In every season, turn.
right. Okay.
Mm.
Oh, you didn't
There
get
we
the
go.
joke. Never mind.
I connected-
Go flat.
no.
Forget it. Forget it.
I connected with that, Joel. Thank you. So
I think you needed to sing it for me. All right, you NFs, knowing what you guys are talking about. So there's like there's a time period.
Yeah.
These are seasonal, and sometimes we can take them as part of our identity. Like we were mentioning, maybe we did experience burnout. Maybe we worked ourselves super duper hard for a while and we totally burned out. And then we got imprinted in our minds, I'm the kind of person who overdoes it. I burn myself out, so I need to go gentle. Or I need to like ease up because I'm totally the kind of person that'll burn myself out. And then that got locked in, that experience got so locked in that later on, maybe it's a time period where we need to start pushing ourselves again, but we won't, because our identity is like, no, I push myself too hard and I burn out. So now I just go gentle all the time. And that's not the right thing for me either. Mm-hmm. And so what I like about what type has helped me with is it helps me, first of all, disconnect from things that are seasonal, but I have incorporated them as identity, right? I'm the kind of person that, because I did that for one time period of my life, and now it's like how I see myself. And now it's like sort of skewing my self-perception. And I think what type helps me do is it helps me go like, well, was that an intrinsic part of my identity, or was that just an experience I had? that maybe I shouldn't be holding on to forever. Maybe I should be going like, okay, actually at this time period in my life, I need to go back to like pushing myself harder. And in order to have a sense of like time through, or like a sense that that's trait behavior, that's not identity. And then to build on that one more thing, I know, because I'm still confusing because there was like lots of layers.
No,
So
I gotcha.
the next layer
I'm
was
taking notes. Don't worry.
okay.
I'm just kidding.
All right.
I am writing things down, but I'm
Okay.
not taking notes.
That self-acceptance, and that here's the other thing, is that self-acceptance requires, and maybe this was just like not really that type related, maybe it was just the fact that we kept talking about type throughout it, so it conflated in my mind. But self-acceptance means if it's going to be done authentically, it means pushing yourself as hard as you know that you needed to in that moment, and then accepting that whatever were the results of that moment. That's actual self-acceptance. If we accept ourselves and we're going too easy on ourselves, that's actually not, we're not actually accepting ourselves. We're accepting that we're going easy on ourselves. And because it doesn't feel like we've actually done our best, because we can't like gauge like I did my best, then that form of self-acceptance turns into a platitude. It turns into like a nice thing that we're telling ourselves about ourselves, like a nice story. But if something inside of us goes, actually, I probably could have done better, what we're doing is we're accepting the fact that we didn't do better, right? Even though our inner wisdom is like, we could have done better. So that kind of self-acceptance always rings hollow. And then if we self-accept only when we're like pushing ourselves and being like super excellent and etc., we're actually not accepting that we have limitations, and that that we'll beat ourselves up if we didn't reach like a benchmark that we were pushing ourselves towards. So self-acceptance also is a constantly moving thing, because at any moment in the timeline, what is your best? It's changed from 10 years ago. It changed from 5 years ago. It changed from maybe even like 10 days ago. Whatever our best is right now, that is also a moving target. And so I think what the action part, you know, anytime we're talking about theorizing about stuff, like I can talk about the stuff all day long, but action is what helps me actually track all of that, right? Like I can't actually know any of that information until I've put into practice going too easy on myself and kind of getting a bad taste in my mouth that I wasn't actually being, or even trying to be excellent at that time. But it also, and then I get a bad taste in my mouth when I like had these high expectations for myself that like were kind of unreasonable for me to ask of myself, and I didn't make it and I beat myself up. I need that bad taste in my mouth. I need the experience of these bad tastes in my mouth all along, and then having an experience of trying and then not matching this expectation, but then also feeling proud of myself and going like, yeah, but I tried my best. And then getting that actual feeling of self-acceptance and all of that stuff that goes, no, I can center, rest into myself. I feel good about it. I need those moments too as a contrast. So we're going to talk about theory versus action. I think action, or another word you could say, is experience. Experiencing yourself in all of these phases as it relates to development. The only way to accurately gauge any of that through a timeline is to keep trying and keep doing it and keep messing up, if that makes sense, until you get it right, until you dial it in, and then go, okay, this is the thing I'm supposed to be feeling. Unfortunately, I've had caffeine, I've had a neurotropic called modafinil, and I've also had a 4-hour conversation with an INTP. So that's where I'm at right now. And I just wanted to like,
where's the pause button? Where's the pause button?
Beep.
No, it generates excitement. I don't know what you're talking about. That's great. But I
I
always
gotta
have
take a
I always
breath
have to-
afterward. Like, I'm out of breath. It's all right.
All right.
I have to get to work now.
Yeah.
All right. So you want to cue up that clip. Karina,
yeah.
our producer, is actually in a different location today. And we, instead of just rolling the dice with the internet, that's where she is, we decided we're going to play the clip from the home studio, which we don't do often. So we might screw it up, but we'll figure it out. We'll be here. So we're going to play a short clip right now from the most recent Personality Hacker podcast, and we posted later today. We're going to premiere it. We're just talking, myself and Antonia having a conversation a little bit, further talking about what Antonia was talking about, taking theory and putting it into application. And as you listen to this, be thinking in your life, right? The whole point of this is to take something we're learning together and then applying it in our actual real world, our actual real lives. Like, what's the point of this unless we're going to find use for it, as far as I'm concerned? I mean, it's nice. Theory can be fun. It can be an exercise, a hobby. That's cool. But man, talk about the power of this system, of the Myers-Briggs system or other personality type systems. Like, putting it into application, you start to see things change in your life, right? last night, myself and Antonia were kind of in a little bit of a disagreement. Well, I would say it's a pretty big disagreement. We're having some hurt feelings and disagreeing. And I think it was through the lens of personality type. We were able to
Very
slow the
much so.
process
Mhm.
down
Yeah.
and talk about the parts of us that were speaking up in that moment. And a lot of it was coming from my insecurities, the parts of me in my personality that I'm not fully certain of. I have a lot of uncertainty and I do a lot of things to overcompensate for the uncertainty I have. And so in the middle of an argument with my wife, with my partner, with the person that I love, seeing that come up and then being able for her to speak to it, and I have to be wise and mature enough to like allow that to happen. And I got triggered. I wasn't wise and mature enough to let it happen. I got triggered. I was like, oh man, we try that again. So this kind of stuff is real. And we were able to actually work through something. It took a little longer than I wanted to, but we actually did get to some resolution last night. And I think it was because we have personality type to lean into when some of those disagreements arise. And so in your life, as you watch this clip, think about what are some applications? What are some ways that I could be thinking about applying these things in a real way in my life? When we come back, I'd love to get a lot of people's perspective on this. We're going to go into some breakout rooms. And if you're watching on YouTube, you should join our quest, personalityhacker.com/quest. Be part of that experience today. You can come into the private community part, and we're going to end the live stream, and we're going to continue talking about some of these things. You should be part of it. I think you'd love it. If you don't have questions, you should grab a friend or somebody and just yell at them about what's coming up for you, because you got to talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
Let's go to
That's
this
true.
clip now. Yeah. And we'll go ahead, Jonathan.
No, that is true. I think you need to talk to people about it.
Yeah.
That's overwhelmingly,
why.
we have to talk about this too. So
Yeah.
And speaking of Quest, I know that what I just said was a blast of nonsense because the chat room is totally quiet. Usually like people are talking and they're just like, what the hell was that? So
no, we're all just trying to keep up with you.
We're just
That's
trying to
it.
wake up.
we're
each
just
other.
even talking
Catch up.
about it. Like, I just woke up. Stop with that nonsense. All right. We're going to seamlessly transition, even though I'm in charge. So let's see what happens.
We'll be back right after this.
People like type systems, particularly Myers-Briggs and Jungian cognitive functions, it feels like it's a sword in the stone that's like throbbing with energy. And because it's throbbing with energy, and because the person who can pull the sword from the stone gets an extraordinary prize, right? They get rewarded with power. They get rewarded with the power of the sword in the stone.
Can we say pulsing instead of throbbing?
Yes, we can.
I don't know why. It's just like, it made me like chuckle.
Okay. Are we still doing phrasing? Yes, pulsing with power is fine.
Or radiating with power.
That's not
Throbbing just sounded very, I don't know.
What do you want, Joel? Tell me the word. So I can continue on with my.
Go to your point.
Okay.
We'll use
thank you.
throbbing. It's fine. A large, big, throbbing sword in the stone. Let's continue.
Joel, I'm in the middle of an analogy here, okay? You're gonna have to let me have it. So there is a power that emanates
Ooh.
from the sword, and because of that, it gathers attention. It gathers people's. It's almost hypnotizing, and we find ourselves circling it, and we find ourselves fascinated by it, and maybe another person comes along and is equally fascinating, and now you're talking about it. Now there's two of you, and you're talking about the sword, and now it's collected all of these people, and they're all standing around it. But nobody ever actually grabs it by the hilt and pulls it out of the stone. Nobody actually grabs it and uses it to its full capacity. Almost like the power the same power represented in it, the same power that attracts, also on some level is kind of scary, because that sword allows you to start carving the life you want. That's what it does. And it feels to me that the type system that has changed my life personally. The reason why I know that it has this level of power represented in it is because it changed my life.
Me too.
Right. It made me, it allowed me to escape situations that were horrifically wrong for me. It allowed me to find myself. It helped guide me into the best version that I could, like, at any given time. Of all the systems and there's systems that I absolutely love and models that I absolutely love, but I keep coming back to this one because it's the one that most consistently diagnoses what's the next lily pad for me. Like, what's the next phase? What's the next thing I'm supposed to be doing to become more whole, to become the most me? And so I understand that it has a ton of power. Now, I might not have understood it had I not been in a terrible situation where I had to have a lifeline. So in some ways, it's not like I'm just super smart and that's how I figured it all out. It's more like I was super desperate, and my desperation made it so this was a lifeline, and it worked. It was a lifeline that worked. And so now I'm an evangelist, right? I'm like, no, actually type is super powerful. The challenge I think that happens is when we become hypnotized by its potential power, but never quite grab it, right? Never quite use it in application, is we can create a bypass of feeling the same temporary hit you would feel if you were making changes in your life by learning more, by learning all of these nuances, by expanding the system, by getting down into the nitty gritty of all of these different nuances. You get the hit of the power, sort of this temporary hit, without any of the negative consequences of making changes in your life, because there's always bad that comes along with the good. For every change we make in our life that improves it, there's going to be consequences that are painful, right? We have to let something go. We have to have a tough conversation. We have to leave the safety of a career. We have to, like start reevaluating our paradigms.
All of it. Uncomfortable chairs.
Yeah. Stop. You're fine.
They're not actually
Suck it up.
They're not uncomfortable. I was making a joke. So like it's fiddling.
Suck it up, Joel. I'm in the middle of a thing. So there's
No, you're absolutely right. There's these things that we must do. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to distract you with the uncomfortable chair.
Yeah, it's fine.
I was trying to be more bantering casual, but see, I failed at that too.
Yeah, you're good. Just wait until the TI is done and then go banter. So there's always a cost, and that's why we don't do it.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's effort, there's hard things, there's pain. There's the whole concept of the way out is through.
Yeah.
It really means that if you want to stop suffering, you're going to have to eat pain. Right? Like you're going to have to be okay with the pain right now to get to the other side. And so when we become theory junkies, we get a hit. We get a hit of feeling like we just learned something that could change our life if we wanted it to. We get that hit of like, ooh, I just learned something new. That was awesome. Yum, delicious. Without the pain, the discomfort, the application always costs us. And so I think the reason why our appetite becomes voracious for type content sometimes is we keep trying to get that hit to be sustainable, but it's not sustainable until we get to application.
Yeah.
Just learning more theory it can become like junk food. It can become to almost like empty calories. It makes us feel full, but we don't feel full for very long because we're not getting the nutrients that our soul is craving. Only application does that. And I think that you can start applying type knowledge at literally every level of theory. You can learn that you're an introvert or an extrovert, and it can change your life.
Yeah.
You can learn that you're an intuitive or a sensor, and it can change your life. Same thing with thinker, feeler, same thing with judge or perceiver. You can, on top of that, learn that you have certain type preferences. Learning that you're an ENTP or an ENFP or whatever that type is, that can change your life if you start applying it, if you start applying your understanding and awareness. When you start getting into functions, just learning that functions are a thing, that there's perceiving and judging functions. Part of our mind learns information, part of our mind makes decisions. Just that can change your life. Just knowing that. You start to get into your cognitive function stack, knowing what your first and second function are. That can change your life. Knowing what all 4 of your preferred functions are changes your life. It can change your life if you start taking it to application.
Yeah.
Learning the 8 function model, it can change your life as long as you're applying it every step of the way. But if you don't apply it, if you didn't apply it when you learned introvert, extrovert, and so on, if you didn't make any application changes, made no changes to your life, your environment, your relationships, to anything based on this information, you just learned more, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change anything, right?
Yeah.
You will not actually be experiencing the power of it. You'll just be sort of hypnotized, transfixed, wandering in a circle around this sword. If you can figure out how to unlock it through application, though, like it can go back to the source code that Carl Jung originally wanted. And this is why he didn't like type. He thought type was going to distract people away from real inner work. And he wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
Even though it's a pathway to it, even though it's the on-ramp to some of those most powerful inner work you can do, it can become a massive distraction. And it can feel like you're making progress. It can feel like you're getting nutrients, but it's just really potato chips, honestly, at a certain point. So I think one of the major things I've personally learned, and I'm going to wrap it back into having done this for 10 years.
Yeah.
One of the major things I've learned in the last 10 years is that there's no substitute for application. And I would take a person who has just learned dichotomies or their type, I would take them applying the information and improving their lives over it or with it over somebody who knows every square inch of every type theory that exists any day. And I think that the former is honoring the model. When you're applying it, you're honoring it. When you're not applying it and you're just learning more, you are dishonoring the model, in my opinion.
Do you think you know more about the system and model now than you did 10 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
I do too.
No question.
And what's interesting, sometimes our students, our clients that come into some of our high level programs, and even just our general live events or something like that, sometimes I can see disappointment in people's eyes when maybe they come up to a microphone at one of our live podcasts and they're asking a question for like some live coaching, or either at one of our personal life path mentorships or even profiler training or advanced program or something. They might ask for advice or coaching, and they're almost sad or disappointed when it's not a complex answer, when it doesn't have like nuance and complexity. Well, that's your that's your analytic, fourth function, all these extra definition. And we're like, look, this is really what it is. We go back to the thing that they aren't doing, like the action they're not taking. And you can almost see a disappointment and like a crestfallen nature to, I want it to be more complex than this. I don't want it to be just simple, like get into my Copilot and grow that. Like that can't be it.
Right.
And this ENFJ person I'm talking about, that's the kind of person they hear that and they're like, okay. And they just go do it.
Right.
They don't feel the need for it to be overcomplicated to go take action on it. And that's what we found. We've actually gotten more simple in the way we teach this, guide this, coach this, and everything. The longer we do this,
yeah,
actually coaching with this, with real people in their life, the complexity is it kills action. It kills application.
Yep.
It kills the ability to have it change your life. Now, you and I have decided to learn all of that so we can access all of the nuance that we need to when we're in a live coaching environment or dynamic. But usually it's not appropriate to bring much nuance or much depth out in that application format, because we're trying to solve something with you want to understand your problem, you want to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to solve it. We strip away all the complexity. There's usually very simple things that we need to do or focus on.
Yeah.
They're not easy,
right?
But they're usually simple.
Yep.
And I think that's the difference. And I think what we end up doing is we flip it and we say, well, complexity makes the action easier or something. Like a complexity in its definition or understanding makes the action easier. And I don't know why we think that, but it doesn't. It just clearly does not. After years of coaching, group coaching, one-to-one coaching, live event coaching, teaching, training through all of these models, complexity kills personal growth.
Well, there is something to be said that, and I say this a lot. So I do think that a good diagnostic leads to a good prescription.
Sure.
And sometimes you have to understand the complexity of how a system is operating in order to create a good diagnostic.
Yes.
So there is something to be said for understanding complexity. That said, a good diagnostic does not replace a good prescription.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I don't understand. Or at least that's where I sort of, I think that we end up doing ourselves a disservice by believing that the best diagnostic is a replacement for a prescription. And I think part of what ends up happening, I'm glad you mentioned that idea, because I've been thinking about this a lot. I think that I probably communicated more complexity early on when I was learning it myself, right? Like as I was learning complex concepts and sort of going down the rabbit hole of theory, that was also very interesting to me. So I can appreciate why it's interesting, because it was interesting to me at one time too.
Yeah, of course.
it wasn't until I understood the magic of and the importance of application, though, of applying literally everything that can be applied. It wasn't until I got to that place where I realized that a lot of the type theory that I thought I knew was not actually accurate, not until I got to application. And so the other thing that application does is it takes us out of the fantasy of type, because type theory is really elegant. That's part of why it's so hypnotizing.
Yeah.
It's a very elegant theory for the most part. And it wasn't until the messiness of life.
The theory didn't work.
Yeah. Or not the way I thought it did.
Exactly.
Right. There's a lot of exceptions to rules. There's a lot of things that I was, I would make dumb comments like an ENTJ would never ... I mean, I made those comments all the time. I see them all the time, right? You can't be an ISFP. An ISFP would never ... I'm like, you mean do human things? Why would an ISFP never do human things, right? If it's a thing that's done, we will do it. Now, we might not do it with the same aplomb that another type would. And it might not be something that we're going to get a lot of attention for.
Or have certainty around.
Exactly. But there's a lot of things that all of us can do that have nothing to do with type. And so the more application I saw, the more I realized that the theory is incomplete without application. And it does get a lot more simple. So there's I would say that probably the number one thing I've learned in 10 years is to not allow type to be a spiritual bypass. And it's very easy for just about anything to be a bypass. And I think it's because authentic personal development is a moving target. You have to do the right thing, and you have to do enough of the right thing to get to the other side of whatever challenge you're experiencing. For sometimes that's rest. Sometimes that's hard work. Sometimes that's going easy on yourself. Sometimes it's going harder on yourself. Sometimes it's intellectual. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's kinesthetic. Sometimes it's with people. Sometimes it's alone, right? It's always changing. And so since our like authentic growth and development requires us to have a vigilance around its constantly changing tone, right? Like we have to keep our finger on the pulse of like, I'm not at the same moment in the timeline that I was before. So the thing that worked for me before might not work for me now. And I have to be okay with that. And I have to be ready for that. And I have to be willing to let go of preconceptions all the time. I have to be in constant perpetual beginner's mind about myself in order to do authentic growth, because I'm not the same person I was before, especially if I benefited from the growth I did before. And so the application of type also teaches us how evolving all of it is. And so if we get too attached to the theory of type, if we become too much of a quote unquote junkie around it, and we get our little hits of thinking that we know everything and that we're intellectually superior to other people. And I would say probably the number one symbol of this is when we overfocus on the importance of diagnosing people's types. Right. And that seems to be like, you can tell that that's when people are in a churn.
But that's the application for a lot of people.
That's the application for a lot of people. You're right.
Like, so they're saying, I am applying it, Antonia.
Right.
I'm trying to help type people.
Right. Exactly. Right.
So isn't that what you're talking about? Applying it? That's what I'm doing.
Right. And so I think that's when you start to getting into a hamster wheel of churn. That's like the first phase is, you're not applying it in your life enough when you're obsessed with diagnosing everybody else's type. Now, I say this as a person who's been running the Profire training course for over a decade, right? That's one of our flagship programs is
We
to teach people,
right?
How to help people come to their best fit type.
Yeah.
We
do a lot of work though in this area with our students to say, this is not what it's about.
That's right.
This is just to get you to the place. Well, it's that moment when somebody looks at you and goes, what do I do with this?
What do I do?
That's the moment that you want. That's where the application can start.
That's right. Yep. And it is a complex thing. It is truly a complex thing to help somebody come to a best fit type, because you have to have mastery over the system and you have to have an understanding of an individual. You have to have enough understanding of the individual to be able to pair them with this complex system. And that means that you have to know them. Like this idea of being able to run around and tell people that that they're mistyped and you've never met them, you've never had a conversation with them, the hubris of believing you know somebody's type better than they do when you've never had a conversation with them. You might have like seen one video or like read a handful of, you know, like a half a dozen tweets or something. And you're like, you're not this type. This type would never ... right? So you can tell that when people are obsessed with being the best at that, there's a bit of an application churn happening, right? That is the level of the application.
Yeah.
You start truly applying it in your life. You become a better version of yourself. You find wholeness of self. You improve your relationships. You start reevaluating your thoughts and belief structures. You improve your relationships with people or complete them, because that's where it has to happen next. You make changes in your career or you ameliorate your career. All of those things, that's the application. And it's watching yourself be able to handle things. It's maturing, right? That's what personal growth is. It's accelerated maturity, right? When you watch yourself mature much faster than your contemporaries of your same age, when you watch yourself become, like I mentioned, 5-6 years ago, the same context we find ourselves in right now, we probably would be freaking out about, but we're not freaking out about it, right? Because we've done a ton of work between then and now to make it so that, oh, we're stressed. There's a lot of things going wrong right now. We're not handling it beautifully, right? We're not handling it with elegance, but we're not devolving, right? Which is probably what would have happened half a dozen years ago. So I think it's hard to communicate the importance of application enough. And I actually think that it's the, and we've been talking about it a lot, I think, in recent podcasts, but it's really, I think it's what separates, it's what separates the actual masters from the enthusiasts. If you can start improving your life with the content, now you have mastery of the original intent of the type system.
All right, welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us, welcome to Personality Quest with Personality Hacker. My name is Joe Mark Witt, here with Antonia Dodge, Jonathan Harden. Producing today is Karina Gunyon. And welcome to all of our Quest members who are on our private Zoom call here. We're going to get ready to go into some breakout rooms in just a moment. But I'll just pause here because we just unpacked a couple concepts, Jonathan, around this idea of theory and practice, and Antonia.
Well, apparently you understood what I was saying after the clip.
Yeah.
Just got ahead of myself.
No, this is, I mean, usually understand some things you say, you know. I will track them later. I do want to say, so I guess in the last couple of weeks, you all have said something about find someone you appreciate their life or you admire them, or there's, you know, a lot of pivotal change that can take place if we just take these steps. And one of the changes I've made, I realize that a lot of times, like when I am looking through Instagram, I slow down and I ask myself, what am I really looking for? Trying to, you know, access what you're teaching. And I realized, oh, my introverted thinking wants to be so smart. And I'm tricking myself to believe that if I get lots and lots and lots, like just bam, real, I'll have suddenly acquired all this super smart information. And you guys, I will be like so smart. You won't even know. And it was a beautiful moment this last day. I was going to work into the snowstorm, and I asked myself, why am I doing this? What am I wanting here? What is the true desire? And it illuminated everything. I was like, I am, gosh, I really do. I want to be smart. I want to be almost like an encyclopedic resource for people and save the world because I had that one perfect piece of information. I do that as a nurse. I do that, you know, just in any aspect of life. I want to have the right answer, teacher. And it can go back to like when I was a kid. Oh my gosh. I so wanted to prove myself, like how smart I was in Sunday school. I would do double time just to make sure I had the right answer. So much so that my teachers actually told me, Jonathan, let's let other children answer the questions.
Yeah. Well, not that I want to invoke that conversation I had earlier today, because that put me in a pretty like blasty space. But one thing we were discussing is as somebody with ENTP preferences, My relationship to my extroverted feeling is it's definitely seeking approval from the outside world. But my relationship to introverted sensing isn't so much. It's like my relationship to myself very much more. And he was talking about as having INTP preferences. It's the opposite for him. His relationship to introverted sensing is more for other people. He's like, I just want to be the most wise person. I just want to show up super wise and like I've had all this life experience and people can see me as being super wise. And I'm like, that's not my relationship to introverted sensing. I don't want to be wise for others.
Memory.
I want to be centered for myself. I want to like rest in on myself and have had enough experiences where I've been able to rely on myself that I can go, I'm a good, wise friend to myself. And I bet with your introverted thinking, as opposed to say somebody with IFJ preferences, somebody with IFJ preferences might also want to be like super smart and know everything, but it's for head pats, right? It's like, guys, I'm super smart. I know all of these things. You should like hear me say all the things that I know because it's like, I know everything and it's looking for the head pat. Whereas I bet with an EFJ, it's a self-approval thing. It's like, I want it for me. I want it for my identity. I want to see myself as a super smart person that has this information inside of me. And that's a slight difference, right? Who am I trying to prove something to? Other people or to myself? But I think it really does alter a relationship with those functions. And so if you're doing it for yourself as a fourth function, how do you know you ever have accomplished it? Like if you're doing it just for your assertion or assessment, how do you know you're complete and done?
Yeah, because I'm not getting the head pats, and that doesn't even work.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone
Yeah.
could even give that feedback to me. I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
I know what it's like inside my head,
Right.
and it's a jumbled mess, you know.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So
Well,
it become
Go ahead.
No,
My
no.
assumption for you is that it serves you well. Like we were right after Proflow training and for Thanksgiving, your family and our family spent some time together, like a couple days. And you know that I'm not drinking anymore. And so you bought me some non-alcoholic beer and you're like, hey, I heard on a podcast, this is what people that aren't drinking anymore might enjoy. I'm like, oh, thanks. I will enjoy that. Like you remembered that piece of information about me and about the podcast you listened to. And then in the moment of need, you connected the two to meet a need for me. And you got me a gift, which I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Thank you so much. Like, I think that would be probably where I would imagine for using ENFJ, your introverted thinking shows up for you more than the head pats.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking maybe I'm not seeking approval to have the knowledge, but I
Yeah.
know that somehow it will serve me being useful in the world and
Yeah.
actually help out, which I wonder if it speaks to like that aspirational nature of the fourth function.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, and I think, I mean, it might be that, although that feels very also just basic extroverted feeling, connecting all the things and going like, here's the thing.
Of course.
And you're like,
just leaning on the data, I'm guessing.
right. Well, I actually think it looks more like legit data, not just information about people. I think with that fourth function for EFJs, it's like, no, I want to know like non-personal things. I want to have data, right? Like I want to be a smart person that knows a bunch of pieces of information that don't necessarily require a relational component in order to, validate its existence.
Yeah.
Right. I want to be somebody who's like a little bit smarter and scientific-y. I suspect that that's the direction.
Yeah, even when you talk about that, I can watch myself trying to avoid like, no. Let's get back into the relational aspect so that I can continue being a good service in the world. It's a lot more uncharted territory for me to just know something because, well, now I know it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think so going back to the point of mentioning all of that, I think the concept of theory versus action is there's the theoretical component of what we just talked about, which is like, how does a function change how our relationship to a function, has it changed between the third and the fourth position? But the application is recognizing that it's going to be a much heavier lift for me to feel complete in my introverted sensing, to feel that sense of like I'm a wise friend to myself, than it is for my INTP friend to be a wise person for others and get a head pat and go, I did it. Right? Like they're gonna have an easier time of metricizing in their minds whether or not they accomplish their goal with introverted sensing in that way, because they're going to use outer world feedback to indicate it. Whereas I'm not going to have outer world feedback as my part of my assessment. It's going to have to be internal. And so what does that mean? What is enough for me? Like at what point do I feel like I've become a wise friend to myself? Man, that doesn't feel like it has any metrics to it at all. It's going to be a felt sense. So how do I become somebody that has a felt sense of that well, then I'm going to have to learn what it means to be a wise friend and then apply all of that to myself. And now I have to get into action. Now I have to become a wise friend to myself. I have to be somebody who shows up for myself. I have to be somebody who's consistent enough that I can trust myself. And that requires a bunch of behaviors that I might not be dialed in right now. And now I have to get into action in order to satisfy my fourth function's desire to feel that way. And so the theory is all interesting, but it only ever actually shapes one's life for the better when we start applying it. It's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to rely on head pats. I'm not going to be able to rely on other people's feedback, because just where it falls for me, I don't care. Like, it's just not going to work, right? Because like John Beebe says, that first and fourth function is the axis of relating to self. It doesn't really take into other people's consideration as much as the second and the third function, or the co-pilot 10-year-old. And so when it comes to our co-pilot 10-year-old, that's the axis of relating to other people. And so we actually have to dial back our compulsion to only seek outer world feedback to know we're doing well there, right? Or to always have to have it in relationship to other people. So understanding these things are super fascinating, but where's the change? Where's the application? Where's the action step that I need to be taking?
Yeah. All right. So with that in mind, let's see if we can put some action to things, right? So we talked about this concept, and Tony talked about this concept of a meal versus a snack. This idea of, like, you know, when you're hungry and you go through life and you eat potato chips or eat a bunch of snacks, your body can feel sated for a period of time because it fills the belly and your digestion goes to work to try to process this. But are you actually giving your body the nutrients it needs? And maybe an hour later, you're like, I'm still hungry, and you snack more, and you get hungry again and you snack more. And then you find yourself grazing and snacking throughout the day because your body's on the hunt for true nutrients, not just these snacks to fill space, but actually to give your muscles and cells and all of the parts of you the nutrients and the fuel to operate. Until you get that really nice meal with all those nutrients, you're going to continue feeling hungry, this low-grade hunger, and probably feel agitated. And so this idea about snacking versus meals, let's tune into that for a moment. And I'll ask you the prompt today. We're going to open up the breakout rooms for the people in the Quest call here on Zoom. If you're at home watching, just see if you can grab somebody in your house and just start, talking to them about this. They won't know what you're talking about, but it'll at least be somebody to talk to. Or you could join us in Quest. That'd be cool too. But here's your breakout room prompt. So as we're going to go into breakout rooms of 3 to 4 people, connect with your fellow Quest member, introduce yourself if you haven't met them yet. So you get to cross-pollinate new friends and new people that you haven't gotten to talk with. Discuss your thoughts on the idea of learning type theory without applying it, and how it can become like empty, quote unquote, empty calories. Remember that snack versus meal idea. So just talking about theory can be like snacking, right? It can feel like we're doing something. It can feel like we're growing. It can feel like we're applying an understanding of ourselves and personality type to our world. But are we actually applying it? Are we just talking about it? Are we snacking? Are we going for a meal? Have you experienced this in your own journey with understanding personality type? What are some of the simple ways we can start applying type knowledge right away? So with your group, 2 to 3 people in your breakout session, start talking about, okay, how do I see it? Am I seeing quick hits from just talking about this and geeking out on it? Or am I applying it away? And see if you can workshop a few ideas on how you can apply this more in your life, taking what you understand about it. What are some other avenues for application? And we come back to the main session, we'll go ahead and talk about this, unpack it as a group, part of the Quest membership.
I think an access point to that conversation is there something you knew about your type for a long time that you hesitated to apply?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you put it off. You're like, I should totally be doing this. And you totally were not doing the thing you thought you should be doing.
That's a great access.
And then finally, at some point, you went, okay, I guess I have to do this thing. And then how did it turn out? Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to open up those breakout rooms for all the Quest members. We'll see you all back here in 12 minutes. And we'll hear from a couple people what came up for you in your brainstorming breakout rooms. See you in 12 minutes. All right. So everyone's going into the breakout rooms now. If you're still on the live stream with us here on YouTube, welcome to this Personality Quest. We're glad you're tuned in today. You should really be part of this growing community of like minds on Quest. personalityhacker.com/quest. It's a small monthly subscription for this as a membership to come in every single week on Sundays, tune into a piece of content, thought-provoking conversation, and then we go into journal prompts. We do discussion groups. We do journal prompting to apply it to the self after we talk about the concept. And then we find an action step in life that week, some kind of exercise to go challenge. We call them a personality quest. Something to go on that week in Quest and learn more about yourself, learn more about other people, career path, relationships, all those things. And we find that this is where personal growth can really happen. In a private membership community, it's hard to just do it here open on YouTube or on the other live streams that we're broadcasting on. It's really important to do this in a place where you can feel vulnerable with people of like minds that get you. that have decided to join something like that. So if you'd like to be part of that every week, we'd love to invite you to come on and be part of this Quest program.
Yeah, well, and I think the reason why is, now that we're talking about the entire subject today, is like, take action, like, don't just theorize, take action. I think one of the things that throttles us is knowing which action to take. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of a conversation, right, with another person, and not just a conversation about type theory, but like, here are my challenges. Here are the things that I'm struggling with. Here are ways in which it feels like understanding my personality type should be helping me out, but I'm not 100% sure which is the specific action to take. And so there's there's diagnosing the challenge, and then there's finding the right prescription to the diagnostic, as we mentioned in the clip. So what I like about these weekly conversations is that they give people an opportunity to workshop it together. And go like, okay, well, I guess I could be probably using my function in this way in this situation, or I could have that conversation with the person. I probably should be doing that.
Yeah.
And I like that Quest does that.
I like to just say, do you want to understand your problem, or do you want to solve your problem? And obviously understanding is important to solve it, but you probably have spent a lot of time understanding and understanding and understanding and talking to more people and understanding even more. It's like, okay, let's get to work. Let's solve this for once, right? And so I think the ethos here at Personality Hackers, we love understanding. We love talking about theory and trying to understand more. But at some point, it's like, well, I actually want to solve the problems in my life. I actually want my life to be different. This is not an exercise in just talking about something to suffer through it. It's to say, you know what? Yeah, I see that I walk into, as an ENFP, I walk into every room talking, assuming that everybody's there to hear what I have to say. But it's reflected back to me by people in my life. Hey, you can't do that. You're kind of being rude just walking into rooms doing that. Oh yeah, I guess that is something I need to change. So now I look at my personality, what I understand about personality, how to be different. I can lean into other parts of myself and start to solve my problem. The fact that I'm getting this feedback that I'm just walking into rooms talking, and people are like, hey, that's kind of rude, man. So again, do you want to solve your problem, or do you want to understand your problem? I think that's really the core question I always have.
Well, it always feels like the first level, and I think this is an appropriate first experience with type, is to go, oh, that's why I do that. I'm an ENFP.
Yeah.
And I mean, not every ENFP is going to do that behavior. You have other things in the system that is Joel Mark Witt that encourages that behavior, right? Like your social subtype, things like that. But once you start like kind of understanding and triangulating yourself in all these systems and understanding why you show up the way you do, there's this sense of relief that there's like, oh, an explanation. There's an explanation for why I'm showing up the way that I am. And that is such an experience of catharsis. There's just such like a relief in going like, oh, I'm not just randomly haphazardly tripping my way through life. There's there's a whole system running here, and how I show up is the emergent of that system. Oh, okay. There's an explanation. There's some rationale around it. The challenge is taking that hit of catharsis, that hit of relief, and just hanging there and not going to the next level, which is, oh, there's a system operating with an emergent. Does that mean that I can actually ameliorate the system? Maybe I don't want to walk into rooms just talking, or maybe I want to, for me, my big one was I had absolutely no idea how I was impacting other people. It didn't make any sense to me. And so when I was younger, I was able to be a lot more rude because I was just blind to the fact that the things I said had an impact on other people. I didn't understand that mechanism. Even if somebody had an impact on me with how they, with the things they said, and I could have my feelings hurt, not very often, it didn't happen often, which is probably one of the reasons why I was blind to it, but it did. So at no point did my brain equate like, oh, well, if somebody can hurt my feelings, I can hurt somebody else's feelings. Like that was just, those wires were totally crossed.
Went one way.
Yeah. And so when I discovered, I mean, I knew I had ENTP preferences for a long time, but when I was like, oh, well, that's just because I have ENTP preferences, so I tend to be a little bit more like that. It wasn't until the moment of like, that's not an excuse. It's a reason, but it's not an excuse. So what are you going to do now to indicate that you understand that this is the dynamic and it's not okay? Like you don't just get carte blanche to hurt people's feelings because you have ENTP preferences. It's not like you got to get out of jail free card. And so I had to go, okay, so how do I show up in a kinder way? What does kindness actually mean?
Yeah.
And then that required the action of altering how I was showing up and altering how I thought other people should be experiencing me. I didn't get to decide that. Other people get to decide how they experience me. And I have to figure out how to navigate through all of that. And so
by the way, this is why God invented INFJs, because they feel guilty for things they didn't even do, so that you can counterbalance each other.
Yeah.
The ENTPs that actually offend people, the INFJs will feel it for them.
Right.
Like, because they
And the
didn't actually-
ISFJs.
Yeah, ISFJs. Because
They,
they're that
like,
IFJ thing where
They
they
come
feel
up with the social broom and sweep up the mess afterwards.
they'll
right?
come to me 10 years like, remember that thing I said to you 10 years ago? I'm so sorry I hurt your feelings. I'm like, what did you say 10 years ago? I
Yeah.
don't remember that. And they're like worried it offended me. You're the opposite. You actually should go apologize for things you
That's
said 10
right.
years
I've
ago.
said terrible things and I'm like, I forgot them all.
But the INFJs are doing it for you. They're apologizing on your behalf, which is
And the
great.
ISFJs.
And the ISFJs. So mentioning what you're talking about, this
Mhm.
idea, I do want to mention that we are getting ready to take off a new chapter of our personality life path mentorship.
Yes,
This might be something you would be interested if you're watching this.
should be.
You should be. It's like this quest is cool, but now add like 100x to it. What we go through is all of the 8 Jungian cognitive functions every single week for 8 weeks straight. And then we end with a live event. This one's going to be in Philadelphia in March. And it's a 3-day event where we take all the learning. We went through every one of the cognitive functions for 8 weeks virtually on Zoom, just like this, or online, just like this. And then we take that weekend and we connect things to create a systems map of your life and then a step-by-step action plan for what we call your life path. Because we believe that if you tune into yourself and tune into how you're wired, all the aptitude, all the wiring you have, all your interests, desires, all those things, and who you are as a person, from that, looking at the system of your life emerges the life path you should be following. It helps you get on your passion, purpose, and mission. We kind of did this just as a test 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. Like, let's see how this goes. Let's put a program together. And then we did another one. And people's lives are continually being changed through this program. And so we're getting ready to start another one. It's becoming very quickly one of the heartbeats of what we do, helping people arrive at what they're supposed to bring to the world on their life path. And we've seen people change careers, get on trajectories, start new projects, businesses, whatever it might be in their life, relationships going forward based on the work we've done through this process. And it can be pretty intense, pretty deep in a good way. And it really digs up a lot of the different aspects of how we engage with all the realities of life that we have to be part of.
Yeah.
So you should check out Personality Life Path. Like, you really resonate with it. If you're a personal growth person, you like to actually put action to stuff like we've been talking about. You can come over to personalityhacker.com/life path. You can learn more information and be part of this program. I think we could work directly with me and Antonia and a group of like minds. About 20 people get together for this. I think it's really powerful. Really, really powerful. So
Yeah,
check it out.
we can't take more than 20, 25 people because we do such deep inner work, particularly
Yeah.
at the live event piece, because it's an 8-week structure that goes through every cognitive function and then determines your relationship to that function. And each function, I've started to see them as each of the cognitive functions represents like an aspect of life, a slice of life. And I think that's why the model works, regardless of how many people who try to like discredit type and discredit all of that stuff. I think the reason why they're always shocked that they can't kill it is because you can't kill true things. And what Jung, in my opinion, stumbled upon, the true thing he stumbled upon, is that each of these cognitive functions represents an aspect of reality that we all have to engage and interact with. So knowing our type preferences is basically knowing which of the aspects of reality of life that we are pre-wired to be focused on and steward and gain mastery over. Like I get to represent these, these elements of life.
Oh yeah.
And that's awesome. And it helps me find my wheelhouse, and it helps me find the things that I can show up and do well, and the areas of life that I might be naturally more weak, so I can stop beating myself up for that. But that doesn't mean that I don't have to engage in all of those aspects of life. And so knowing what my relationship with that aspect as represented by the function of that area of life is super helpful for me to be able to diagnose blind spots, weak spots, areas that I should be delegating to other people, areas that maybe I haven't delegated to others. And that's why it's created this issue or this problem that I keep experiencing over and over again. And those 8 weeks basically prime the pump of like, oh, okay, that's why I feel this way. Oh, okay, now I understand why that's my relationship to that element. And then at the live event, the 3-day live event, now we take all of that priming of the pump, we take all of the learning that we did in those 8 weeks, and now we bring them to like the rubber hits the road. Okay, in your life, in your context, what is the biggest pain point? What is the biggest challenge? What's the thing that you're really having trouble getting to the other side of? And if you can figure that out through priming the pump of all of those 8 weeks and bring all of that understanding and newly acquired self-awareness through action, by the way, every week, everybody chooses an exercise. Everybody has to do something that relates to that function. And there's a whole list going from more complicated to less complicated, because like intake, for example, extroverted sensing week, If you have ESP preferences, you're going to want to choose a more challenging exercise than somebody who maybe has ENP preferences or INP preferences. So you choose an exercise based on your level of familiarity, proficiency, and your suspected relationship to it. And then if you see if you're right, what was your relationship to that exercise? How did it actually work out? Sometimes people are like, I'm going to choose 3 or 4. And they come back and they're like, I couldn't believe it. I resisted all of them. I didn't do a single one because I just had such strong resistance to it. So you take all of that understanding and learning about yourself and you bring it to the live event. And now we can go deep. Now we can really diagnose some major issues or challenges in your life and get to the other side of them. It's my favorite program that we put together.
Yeah. And a lot of people coming in are in the middle of transition, or they're reevaluating maybe the trajectory of life they've been on. And so they're looking for a new life path. A few people are starting out in life, college age or university age, where they're deciding what to actually attend to in life. And I think both of those levers are great. I think if you're in a transition or if you're just starting out, I think this can be very helpful for you. I think Antonia and I learned so much this process together. Like we grow also through this in our own selves, just guiding and leading and being part of this. I wish we'd had this when we were younger. When we were in a transition point about 15 years ago or so, it's a pretty big, tough time in both of our lives. And we didn't have something like this. That was an on-ramp or a guardrail for what was coming next. All right, we got to go. Our students are coming back, or the members are coming back from Quest Club breakouts. Are going to be joining us just momentarily. So we got to go off the live stream here to go join them and talk more about this discussion of applying type in real life. Hopefully we'll see you in the Personality Life Path mentorship if possible.
personalityhacker.com/lifepath.
Yeah. And until next time, we'll see you next week on Sunday, 11:45 a.m. for the next Quest Club membership.